Hey, welcome to the show. Unless you are super into fat shaming, coffee enemas, and jade vagina eggs. If that's the case, you might not love this episode because today I'm talking to Michael Ulloa and Kate Lyman, who are on a mission to shoot down all sorts of bullshit in the fitness and wellness space. Their podcast is called How to Fitness, and I'm just going to play their demo reel for you so that you know why I had to have them on the show.
We have a health and fitness podcast. We know that spouting nonsense will get us more listeners than genuinely trying to help people.
We have a health and fitness podcast. We're going to discuss really important topics without ever acknowledging our privilege.
We have a health and fitness podcast. We're going to interview different experts with contradictory opinions just to make sure you stay confused at all times.
We have a health and fitness podcast. We know that we can make loads of money selling detox supplements that will do nothing other than make you shit your pants.
We have a health and fitness podcast. We're going to use clickbait titles to scare you into listening to our show.
We have a health and fitness podcast. Soon we're going to run out of topics and we're going to have to start promoting some really harmful ideas because our listening figures are strongly correlated to our self-worth.
In this episode, Michael, Kate, and I get into why there is so much bullshit in the fitness industry, the red flags you need to be on the lookout for when you're taking fitness advice from anyone, what to do and what not to do if you want a loved one to get more fit and more healthy. We also talked about whether we would personally hire a trainer with abs. And we talk about when a smoothie is healthy and when it is totally not healthy. And we cover FUPA training workouts. And if you don't know what a FUPA is, I did not know what a FUPA is. Oh my God, dude, prepare to roll your eyes when you find out.
Breaking news. Your dream life isn't going to happen because you made a vision board. You're going to need goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. This podcast is about getting clarity on what you want, having the grit to do the actual work, and most importantly, constantly training your brain to be your bitch. Ready to be inspired? Here is your host, best-selling author, Una Duncan.
All right, Michael and Kate, thank you so much for doing the show. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So I want to dive right into it if this is okay. So, Michael, your tagline on Instagram is helping you navigate the fitness industry, and your shared podcast has a similar mission. So what do you mean by that, and why is that needed?
Mostly because I know I always annoy a few personal trainers when I say this, but I feel like most of the fitness industry is absolute nonsense. Like most of what personal trainers, nutritionists, whatever you want to call it, are trying to sell on social media is just nonsense, or even just things that aren't really worth considering. Our approach, both Kate and I, when we're creating our podcast and doing social media, is just really streamlining stuff and making it really, really straightforward, because I truly believe that you can just have such a really easy, straightforward approach to exercise and nutrition and make amazing progress. All those little fine-tuning bits that people focus on social media because they're sexy and fun are just, most of the time, not even worth considering. So that's kind of my mission with my social media, is to kind of take the mickey out of myself a little bit whilst doing it, and break down a few barriers in the fitness industry and just make it a bit more human. And yeah, I like to think Kate and I together, we're a good team at kind of just having a bit of a laugh and just making things really straightforward for people.
You know, Michael's so much better at kind of addressing all the nonsense. I love our podcast because we get to do that together. I find myself a little more like head down in the sand working with my clients and what I do, and less like even hearing the noise. I always joke with Michael that I don't really know what's going on because I'm not on TikTok. So I don't even know the nonsense being espoused there. But once I hear it, I'm like, oh, I'm glad that Michael exists, and I'm glad that we have our podcast so we can talk more about these things.
Right. And glad that's not my world. Yeah. So Michael, especially for you, at what point in your fitness career did you realize that you were swimming in a pool of mostly nonsense?
It's been a slow progression, if I'm honest. Like, I know a lot of trainers or whatever will have like a point where they're like, oh, this happened and then everything changed. Like, I didn't really have that at all. It's just been just a really nice evolutionary process of starting off pretty kind of typical bro in that kind of very calorie focused all the time, or very image focused, lifting weights just to build muscle, not doing cardio because it will ruin my gains, all that kind of stuff. And then just the longer I've been in the fitness industry, the more amazing clients I've worked with, the more practitioners that I've met, like meeting Kate through social media. I've just met some amazing people who have helped me to streamline my approach and focus on the things that really matter. I also have had some really brilliant clients that have been quite honest about my content. Back in the day when I'll create a post and they'll be like, oh, that wasn't really helpful, so maybe try this instead. And yeah, it's just been fine-tuning my approach. And I finally feel like I'm actually making a difference in the fitness space, which is pretty cool. I'm really happy with it.
I love it. I really think you are. So like I said, I was just binging your podcast, and the one of them that I listened to just today was about Goop, Gwyneth Paltrow's huge wellness brand Goop. And one of the things I love the most is the little tidbit you said about how she came up with the name Goop. She was told that words with two O's tend to do well on e-commerce brands. And then she just took her initials and put the two O's in the middle. And I was like, what? Because I always thought that it was this really like grounded acknowledgement of the fact that all we're selling here is a bunch of fucking goop. Not true.
You give too much credit.
Yeah,
I guess
too
I did.
much credit.
Because that is like what most beauty stuff is. It's a bunch of goop. Anyway, and then the other part, this is really funny, guys. You have to listen to this episode. So they have a little thing called Goop or Poop. And they throw out all these like ridiculous products like smash crickets and put it under your armpits for natural deodorant or whatever. Like, that was not one of them, but equally stupid. And then you have to guess whether it was a real product sold on Goop or not. So anyway, I just want to say, you also have a quote saying all of this goopified nonsense prevents people from getting fitter. So how? Like, I understand that it's nonsense and it's a distraction probably, but is it evil or is it just sort of a distraction?
I think it's a distraction and something that I think we learn a ton through our podcast. At least I can say for me, I learned so much because we do so much research for our episodes. And at the end of just about every episode, we come back down to, okay, here's the foundation of what facilitates change in our nutrition, in our relationship with food, in our fitness. And it's the same basics over and over and over again, right? So when like kind of the fitness industry is espousing all of these different things and distracting us with different products and programs, et cetera, I don't think it's evil. I think it's all for monetary gain, but like what isn't, right? But it's a distraction from the basics that actually make a difference. And in that way, it's overcomplicating our health and providing a lot of barriers where barriers are not needed, especially around income and time and availability and all of that. So I don't think it's malicious, but it definitely is not helpful.
I just think the whole Goop brand is built on money and portraying the image of health rather than actually focusing on our health and improving it. You know, it's all about being able to go on expensive retreats and being able to buy these products like psychic vampire repellent. Yes, that was a product in Goop versus Poop. I just feel like these companies, I don't know. I don't want to give them too much credit and say, oh, it's not malicious as well. But I think a lot of the time it is. Like a lot of the time, these huge brands, they get to the point where it just all becomes about money and what we can sell people. And the proof is in how many times they've been sued for completely lying to people. And you just got to look at the people that they platform on their websites that are just incredibly dangerous. These characters that should not be anywhere near a position of authority, giving this platform to millions of people, and it's just terrifying. So we need more people like us calling out the nonsense, and hopefully a few people will see it before they buy into all this crap.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to leave Goop aside because obviously we're going to take down the whole empire. And so we'll just, because we've got that power. So we'll just put them aside for a second. I wanted to talk to you about some of the other things you say on your social media that people might do a double take. So one of them is, please stop promoting workouts as fat burning or toning. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's one thing in the fitness space that really annoys me, and it's because it does really well on social media, and that's why people use these taglines, right? It sells. People go onto YouTube because they want to burn a bit of fat after Thanksgiving or Christmas or their birthday or whatever. When in reality, no workout or exercise will ever target fat. Like it completely comes down to a caloric intake and caloric balance that leads to weight loss or weight gain. So the fact that these workouts are kind of using these words that are horse crap that don't really mean anything, but also they're preying on people's insecurities and making them feel bad about certain body parts, like target your bingo wings or target your FUPA, which is one that we see all the time on social media now.
Okay,
and
can I just pause you on FUPA? Because that was one of my follow-up questions. What the fuck is a FUPA? I didn't even want to. I was like, I know I can Google this and I'll go through down a rabbit hole, but I would love to know from your words what FUPA is.
I'm not going to say it. Michael's got to say it.
I'm not going to. So there's one way is kind of fat upper pubic area, but another one is fat upper P word for another area of the body area. Yes. So it's. I'll let people Google it if they're still unsure after me explaining it, because that's as close as I want to go.
Basically, lower belly fat. Is that what we're talking about here? Like the fat that actually protects our internal organs that we need to reproduce?
Yeah. And the one
Pretty
you
much.
often have after like having a baby or, living life, the normal stuff.
There are now FUPA workouts. There's lower ab fat workouts. There's kind of just anything, and none of them mean anything because you can never target these areas. So that was why that's what inspired that post. We still constantly see it all of the time on social media, and people know it gets clicks, so they keep using it without really understanding the implications of it. Unfortunately.
Totally. I saw an Instagram post that was a picture of Linda Carter. If you know who that is, she was like the original Wonder Woman on TV. She's like gorgeous. It was the peak of her amazingness. And someone posted in the comments, wow, she has hip dips and she doesn't even care. And I was like, what the fuck are hip dips? And so I Googled hip dips and I realized, oh God, hip dips are supposed to be a very big problem that we are supposed to be fixing. And it reminded me of, cellulite was also a manufactured problem that we're supposed to be fixing. And it's just like, hip dips, FUPA, cellulite, they're all basically manufactured problems, right?
Yeah, and to give names to them, like, gives so much power to this just normal physiology. And I've seen, to Michael's point, like, it gets clicks. So I've even seen people creating content that, like, has the clickbait title and then says, like, get rid of your FUPA. And it's like, you can't, because this is about your nutrition or whatever. But we're still perpetuating this idea that, like, we call our body this thing, and that it's something to get rid of, right? Like, I think it's maybe like a noble intention, but it doesn't really do anything but kind of perpetuate this messaging that's really harmful.
Okay, so here is, I think, the big ethics question in our industry. What do you think about the Trojan horse of talking about aesthetics in order to get people to exercise? So, for example, I interviewed Danielle Friedman, who wrote a book of the history of women's exercise. And she said women's exercise has almost always been marketed. When it's marketed successfully, it's almost always for aesthetic purposes. And she said, even I started exercising because I wanted to look good for my wedding. And then when I did, I discovered I felt so powerful and it was amazing. And I felt so much healthier. And so it's sort of this, like, I've had business coaches who say, sell them what they want, give them what they need. And so what do you guys think of the ethics of that?
I owned a strength company for a while, strength programming company, and with my husband, another partner, and we promoted our programming, which was really solid, evidence-based strength and conditioning program focused on, progressive overload, all the things. But we focused on our messaging around feeling better, living life better, getting outside and doing more things. And it was to me, like, the qualm of the century to not ever mention aesthetics, because that is naturally another outcome of getting stronger, right? But we didn't want to promote our business on that platform, but also we don't have our business anymore. So that's kind of how it went, right? Like, we had it for a few years and it's not like it like crumbled into the ground. It just wasn't taking off in the way we needed to continue. And I think I understand the merit of, like, tell them what they want, give them what they need. And, like, how do we stop it? Right? Like, it leaves us no place to reconfigure how we speak about exercise or strength training or anything like that in any different way when we're, like, pigeonholed into this has to be about aesthetics no matter what. So I have seen some bigger programs lately take on a less aesthetic focused marketing tactic, but they already had the following, and it was definitely built on the foundation of this is for aesthetics. So I think that's welcome change, but I don't know, but they also have a leg up on they kind of focus on aesthetics first,
Yeah, so just a personal question.
I don't know.
Think if your strength company had been called, like, Big Booty Bitches or whatever, like, do you think you'd still be here?
Maybe. Because another reality is we had a lot of aesthetic outcomes, positive outcomes in our clients, but we chose not to use testimonials, and we chose not to go that direction. But that's kind of what sells. So I think it's probable. I don't know. It's a bummer to think of it that way, honestly.
It's so tough, isn't it? Kate's spot on. Like, a lot of the time, people switch their messaging. They have a following, or they have some sort of business structure there. It's so difficult for new coaches starting up as a personal trainer when you have no evidence of being a success, because usually our barrier, or our barometer of success is before and after photos, or showing how much our clients have lost, And I think that if you're coming into the industry trying to be like, oh, I can help you improve your health, but you don't have any way of showing that, it's really difficult to get started. So how long are you really going to stick that out before you struggle to pay your bills? And I think it also comes down to how much of an issue it is us talking about aesthetics as well. This is something that me and Kate have discussed a lot on the podcast, is the fitness industry is still going through a very weird shift at the moment of kind of body positivity, body neutrality, focusing on wellness, but also a lot of the fitness industry is criticizing anyone who wants to change their body and focus on aesthetics. And I think that's wrong too. So I think we're in just this really weird space where I don't know the answer. I'm just kind of chatting nonsense here, but trying to find a way to market ourselves as fitness professionals by saying like, right, it's cool if you want to focus on the way that your body looks, but I don't want that to be the main focus of everything I do, because it's not the most important thing, even if it might be to that person. So yeah, it's a struggle, and I still don't really know the answer. You'll probably see it through the content that I create on social media. I still kind of toy with the idea of how much I want to talk about changing my body, and because I lift weights to build muscle and feel confident in a t-shirt. Like, I shouldn't feel bad for saying that. No one should feel bad for wanting to lose weight for their wedding or a holiday or whatever. Like, I think putting the onus on the individual is just a really unfair thing to do when society's set up like it is. But that's another deep discussion for another day, I think.
I think it's almost problematic to swing so far in the other direction where we don't speak to the fact that people have aesthetic goals. Like, they exist. And while we can like rally against the beauty industry for making these specific physical traits that mean beauty and stuff, like we do want to look good, feel good, right? So I think there's a problem with swinging so far where we say, hey, we don't talk about aesthetics at all, because then wanting to change your body, even when approaching it in like a safe and sustainable way, becomes bad and wrong. And then we get icky feelings about that too. And then it's like, is there nothing that's okay? Like, can we do nothing right? So I think it's just always balancing. How do you want to talk about this? How much do you want to talk about it? How can you talk about it in a way that's supportive? And I guess my approach is, how can we talk about aesthetics or aesthetic goals in a way that helps people become more knowledgeable about what it is, what it takes, how to go about it in a sustainable way, instead of like, here's how you get here quick, or here's why this is bad.
Hey, quick interruption. If you have health or fitness goals, I have a program that can help you smash it. But don't take it from me. Here is the real deal from one of my clients.
3 years ago, I had put on weight that I just couldn't move. I needed something I could stick to, something manageable. Now, 3 years on, I have a good healthy habits, good lifestyle, I have a manageable weight. I would say to anybody considering joining the MFA, just do it. Do it, you won't look back. And it's something that you will lean on time and time again. I couldn't recommend it enough.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing all that, because this is something that, throughout my career, I'm just constantly trying to figure out. I started out actually as I was a fat activist. And then when I started my fitness company, I called it Fit Feels Good. And it was only a feel good narrative. I was really strict about that with all my trainers. And then I once had a client who came up to me and almost this kind of confessional, like, I'd actually really like to, be able to see some muscle. And it was so sweet and so understandable. And I was like, and then I realized how many of my clients wanted these weight loss goals and weren't telling me because they felt like I was going to silence them. And I felt like I was actually invalidating a big part of what they wanted by constantly saying, we don't talk about that here. So anyway, I just wanted to say, we don't have this figured out, the three of us right now, but I love the discussion and thank you for having it with me. So I'm going to take you to another quote that you have here. Fitness doesn't have a look. Health and fitness is represented by our behaviors, not our aesthetics. So talk about that.
I think health and fitness is on a spectrum, right? And every single one of us is going to be unique in the way that our bodies will look or perform at a certain weight or whatever. And I think as soon as we start, which is exactly what the fitness industry does and thrives on, as soon as we start saying like, this is what you need to look like to be fit and healthy, it's just a really slippery slope, because the person that you're choosing as your pinup, no one's ever going to look like that person because they're an individual. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, the people that we're putting on that pedestal are those that are taking performance enhancing drugs, using really disordered eating and exercising habits, just probably quite miserable as well. Like, we don't talk enough about the body dysmorphia around those that are of the kind of peak physical fitness within the fitness space. So that's why that topic is really, really important. I don't think that fitness has a look, because it can look different for every single one of us. And the thing I always like to talk about on this topic is the fact that you can improve your health and fitness without ever changing the way that your body looks. So you'll have a lot of people who potentially have been trying to lose weight for a long period of time and struggling with doing that. Therefore, they kind of throw in the towel because they think, oh, what's the point? And whereas if we can make those people realize that, well, actually, if you completely put aside weight loss as a goal, you can improve every health marker that you have simply by focusing on healthy behaviors like eating more vegetables, drinking more water, exercising regularly, walking more, giving yourself some kind of more mental space to just think clearly. Like, there's so many different things that you can do that don't require you counting calories and getting shredded, and it's a really important message. And I think that's probably like at the foundation of what our podcast really is, to be honest.
We get into the idea that our health is a look as well, right? Whereas the more I do like that, I think the internet and the social media space is opening up more to shedding truth or light on the fact that the leanest is probably your least healthy, or the leanest is probably your worst relationship with food. And there's correlation between, like a negative correlation between this lean look and your actual health, because you're completely preoccupied with food and you're underfed and you have poor energy and you have no sex drive and you feel miserable, and the list goes on. So to Michael's point, like, we have to talk about health, but then also we have to separate the idea that how we look is indicative of our health.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I mean, God knows the general population feels this, but us as fitness professionals, I mean, there's also so much of an idea that we are supposed to look a certain way, right? And I used to train and certify new fitness professionals, and the biggest objection that people would often have is, "Oh, I'm not in good enough shape yet to be a trainer, to be a leader." And it just broke my heart every time I heard that, because like you're saying, fitness doesn't have a look, and it's all about helping other people. And that said, I wanted to ask you, because Kate, you said, often that image that we have of the ripped person on the cover of Self magazine or whatever, and we're like, yes, that's fitness. Knowing what you guys know about what it takes to get ab definition, for example, would you personally ever hire a trainer with abs?
I think that would be the thing I take into account the least. I need to know, like, their history and their education, what their programming looks like. But this is like, I have the knowledge to do this, right? I think that I've come to a point, and this, I don't know, this is always my answer, where that's just so beyond what I care about, right? But it's taken a lot of time to get here, because I started as a trainer when I was 17. And if you think about that age and the atmosphere of being a trainer and being really criticized for your body, like, that was really hard on me for so many years, So I can only say that with confidence now, because I've been through a lot of shit to get here,
I'm with Kate there. And also, I think on that kind of what it takes to get abs, I think that some people find it really easy and others don't. So you may be hiring a trainer with abs who just kind of woke up and looked like that, right? So it is just really unimportant. And I think, once again, with Kate, like, my opinion on this has probably shifted a lot in the time that I've been a coach. I've been a trainer now for kind of just over 10 years. I think me and Kate are kind of veterans here. We've been here for quite a long time. High five, Kate. I just think that my priorities have completely changed. And I actually made kind of like a conscious decision on social media not to ever use my body and the way that it looks to advertise, because I really want personal trainers to start shifting away from that. And I want to be an example of this, and not to sound too kind of white knight about it, but I truly feel like it's not the important thing about me, right? Like my knowledge on nutrition, on exercise, on programming, whatever it is, does like the way that my body looks is zero relation to that. Yes, I like to focus on like some aesthetic goals when I'm exercising, but that doesn't matter in terms of like how I coach my clients. So, yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how that transition moves on? I think like both Kate and I, we recently had kids. Kate's kid is 1 month older than mine, so we're kind of going through this whole process together as parents. And even in the last year, like I feel like the way that I approach fitness and nutrition, everything just completely changed once again in that past year. So I find it quite easy now to be like, oh, I don't care about that. But I appreciate that, like Kate, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I really would have cared. It would have been something that I looked for, maybe in a coach that I wanted to work with. I'd be like, oh, do they look jacked? I only want to work with that guy because he looks how I want to look. Whereas now I realize it's not that important.
Right. And I like that you pointed out that it's very possible that that person just woke up with abs, just as health, doesn't have a look, as in someone with a lot of body fat can also be healthy. Someone with minimal body fat isn't necessarily orthorexic. Right? Like it doesn't mean that they are pathologically concerned about their food and their nutrition and everything. Very good point. And it's again about not going too far in the other direction, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like recognizing that genetics play a role too, right? Like, okay, we're coming up after the Grammys and everyone's obsessed with Miley Cyrus's arms, right? And like, what is Miley doing to get these arms? And it's like, well, she has really great genetics and she works out and it's her literal job, full-time job to look how she wants to look. And you compare that to a parent or a full-time working parent, anyone who has a normal life. And it's just like, we have to be realistic about what's feasible for us and where we're at in life and the external circumstances that play a role in how we look, because it's not just how hard you work out.
Right, for sure. And I think you guys often touch on how elitist the fitness industry is. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, it kind of goes back to what we talked about with the distractions, right? There's a lot of companies selling a lot of distractions from the basics, and a lot of them are costly or assume that you have time to like endless amounts of time to devote to your fitness or nutrition. And it's just placing these barriers that not many people can like hurdle over, right? If you're balancing family and a job and kids' school projects, and you also want to make it to the gym, but you also want to, cook well for you, but you do have a budget and all of these things, like how feasible is it to get, I don't know, tell me some of get the IVs every whatever week, or like only buy these perfectly prepped or create these perfectly prepped meals in these beautiful glass containers. Like, right? Like it's just creating these barriers that makes
with organic vegetables as well.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're made to believe that anything in a package is toxic, tell that to some poor mom who's just trying to get some food on the table, right?
Exactly. And that's what we're working so hard on in the podcast, is like breaking down these barriers, really, because we all deserve to work towards the health goals we have, whether that is fueling our bodies well, or feeling better in our energy, or if it's aesthetic, or if it's performance related, whatever it is, we all deserve to be able to work towards that in a way that doesn't require all of your extra time, all of your money, and basically like selling your soul to get there. And that's often what these product programs, people are preaching.
Okay, so Michael, I'm going to throw another quote from your social here. You said you will get more progress with your fitness if you prioritize mental health.
Absolutely. I mean, if anyone, you're probably getting the vibe. If anyone listening to this doesn't follow me on Instagram, you're probably getting the vibe of what my general message is that I'm preaching. I always have longevity in mind, right? And I truly feel like if you want long-term success with your fitness or nutrition, no matter what your goals are, your mental health always needs to come first. I don't think anything should come between you and that. Whether that is kind of your how many days a week you're exercising, how much sleep you're getting, like all the factors that you are needing to think about whenever you go on a fitness journey. Your mental health always needs to come first, because if you don't have that, then no goals are ever going to last long term. And it's there's kind of not too much else to add to it than that, but it's something that I champion in a lot of the content that I put out there. And if more people focused on that, there'll be far more success within the fitness space, unfortunately. But a lot of the time it's not sexy to focus on your mental health. We just want to focus on 6-week abs.
Right. Yeah, and you in your blog you quote a study from the Canadian Medical Association Journal, and you said it explored the dangers of fat shaming, and they found that exposure to weight bias triggers physiological and behavioral changes linked to poor metabolic health and increased weight. Can you tell us a little bit more about that study and what you mean by quoting that?
This one, I believe, was kind of targeted at those who show or pretend to show that they care about other people and the way that their body looks and the way that they're performing. I have many friends who work within the fitness space that are in larger bodies, and you just have to look at the comments underneath all of their posts to show that for some reason, the fitness industry has an issue with it. And for some reason, people feel like by commenting on someone, by telling them that they are overweight, by telling them that they are unfit or unhealthy is somehow going to make them feel awesome. And they're suddenly going to
get off the couch and
suddenly going to, yeah, exactly. When in fact, all the research just continually points towards the fact that if you criticize someone for their weight, if you comment on their behaviors or whatever, it's only ever going to have a negative impact. So, but once again, you can quote this research to the people that are leaving negative comments in social media posts, and they don't really care, unfortunately. But the reason I like doing posts around this topic is because it's usually family members that are the biggest culprits, and they truly feel like they are doing the right thing by commenting on someone that they love, because they think is the best thing to do. Like the amount of clients I've worked with, they're like, my mum took me to Slimming World because she thought I was unhealthy and wanted to help me, where in fact it just had a really negative impact, and that was the start of their eating disorder, right? So if we can start highlighting, okay, we need to be really careful in the way that we navigate talking to people about their body or their exercise or their nutrition, because the impact can be huge. And yeah, that's kind of what that research was highlighting.
And I can hear people thinking, yeah, but, my child is starting to put on a lot of weight and I'm concerned. What for people who do have concerns about a loved one that they think is going in a direction that's going to make them unhappy or unhealthy, what recommendations would you have for them?
I think the best thing we can do is model, right? And we recorded not too long ago a full deep dive podcast episode on this topic of like family fat shaming or family body talk or diet talk, and how the way we speak about bodies, food, diets, etc., impact our children, siblings, every unit of the family. And in it, we talked about how, as parents, the best thing we can do is model positive behaviors. And that's that, right? Like by criticizing someone's body, their eating behaviors, their eating patterns, anything like that, that never causes the person to flip around, do a 180 and like start having better habits. It typically causes disordered eating patterns. It causes worse health outcomes, etc. So we have to trust that, modeling our own behaviors has a positive impact, and know that the literature says it's going to have a far more positive impact than making comments ever will.
Yeah. And I mean, the unfortunate thing is that the loved one that we are critiquing the most is often ourselves. And we think that if we look in the mirror and be like, this is unacceptable, you got to get rid of those bingo wings or what FUPA or whatever. You're being lazy. I can't believe you screwed up. And like all this chatter that's going through probably so many of our clients' heads all the time. And we know from other studies that the more you beat yourself up about having gained weight or needing to lose weight, the more you are going to have these self-soothing behaviors that are probably going to get you the opposite result that you want. And that's what's so sad.
Absolutely. And imagine how much we cannot have the capacity to speak kindly to other people or about their eating behaviors or bodies if we can't even do it for ourselves, because that's kind of, so it's square one.
This is a really cool topic actually to talk about, because a fun story now. So I did a post a long time ago. I think my body was in the post, and it's always a guy who has a selfie with his abs showing that leaves these comments, like without fail always. And they commented on my body in some way. I can't remember what they said because it was a few years ago now. And a friend of mine who is lovely, hi Beth, if you listen to this, messaged them because she was really annoyed with what you said. So Beth went and called him out, and he sent me a DM the next day, like a long apology. And it was basically talking about how unhappy he was, how bad he felt about his own body. And this is why he lashed out and commented on mine. So ever since that post, every time someone comments on my post on social media, I always take a step back before responding, because I used to kind of give a little bit back because why are you being a dick to me? I'm trying to be nice and help people. But in reality, if you take a step back, all the people lashing out, it's all a kind of self-reflection of how they're feeling about themselves and never about you as an individual. So it's, it's a really sad topic. And the fitness industry is to blame for pretty much all of it. I think the fitness and wellness industry, of kind of the way that we encourage people to exercise and to improve their habits, is all kind of self-shaming, like no pain, no gain, and like sweat is fat crying and all this kind of nonsense. Like it's all about just be hard on yourself and that's how you're going to make progress. Where in reality, it's the complete opposite. And we need to start giving ourselves a bit more self-compassion. And that's the good foundation for building healthy habits.
Totally. You said that most health and fitness industry practices are toxic. Is that what you're talking about? The kind of no pain, no gain bullshit? Or is there other stuff you're referring to there?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it, like I think that most of the approaches that the fitness industry uses to sell its products, to encourage healthy behaviors for people, are just awful. Like we spoke about already, personal trainers will use before and after photos to sell their services. Straight off, the person seeing that is comparing their body to that person, like, oh, I feel crap about myself. This person's going to help me out. All the tactics of kind of giving someone a meal plan. This is what you'll eat. It's 1,200 calories. You'll feel awesome and you'll lose weight. Like all these things that are so normalized are so incredibly disordered and should not be the norm. But unfortunately, with every person we work with, it needs a really individualized approach depending on lifestyle, eating history, relationship with food and your body. But the fitness industry doesn't take all of that into consideration ever, because it doesn't sell easy. Like me and Kate could make so much more money if we sold out and flogged supplements on the side of our coaching programs. And it's just, we have to play the long game with it. But unfortunately, it's really, really difficult.
It is. So this is actually, I really want to ask you guys this, because I was like, why has this evolved this way? And I was like, it's evolved this way because it's really freaking hard to make a living as a trainer. If you're just a regular Joe trainer at a gym, it is incredibly hard to make a living doing that, never mind support a family, etc. And then I was like, well, what if fitness professionals were funded the way, for example, in Canada, we have the universal healthcare, which definitely has a lot of problems, but theoretically, our doctors are not incentivized to sell things. What do you think that kind of model would solve these problems?
I mean, part of the challenge is that this is a very unregulated industry, right? There's nutrition coaches, nutrition professionals, dietetics professionals, dietitians, right? Like some of those are very regulated, and some are just a title that you can make up if you're in the US, depending on which state you live in. Like it's state to state, so it would be very difficult to do that because there's not even regulation to begin with. But also, I think it would bring a lot more honesty to the industry.
Kate, what I was looking at your social, and one of my favorite graphics of yours is you have pictures of foods and you say this can be healthy or unhealthy. You'll have everything from cake to salad, could be healthy, could be unhealthy. You say, a smoothie is healthy if you're using it as a quick way to get protein and micronutrients. It's unhealthy if you're using it as a meal replacement to lose weight. And I love that, because there are always these nuances, right? But I also wondered, people are coming to us desperate for simplification, for clear structure, for, anything that's going to help them achieve their goals. And so I wonder, do you think that we constantly respond to those questions? Well, it depends. Are we doing them a disservice and making it more complicated? Or do you think that having goals is not even the right way to approach nutrition and fitness?
I think it depends is so hard, right? Because it's like 99.9% of the questions asked are going to be, it depends. But I think if we follow it up with the education, and not too much nuance even, but like a simplified education on, well, what does your relationship with food look like? And what's your intent behind this food choice? Or what's your intent behind this goal? And it allows some time to get people thinking, then they're building the skills and knowledge they need to make more sustainable changes, if that makes sense. So it's hard because I'm so with you. I feel like sometimes the it depends answer feels like you're brushing someone off. And it's just the absolute opposite. It depends on them, right? Is the cookie healthy because you're eating a cookie after years of being really scared of carbs? Or is it like a response to eat a cookie because you had a bad day and you feel like it was off limits, and then you eat 20 more cookies and then you feel guilt and shame and physical discomfort and all of this, right? So we can't answer the question. We can't give a solid answer on some of the more nuanced topics like that, but we can follow it up with a little more education and understanding so that the people we're working with, whether it's one-on-one or in a larger capacity, like talking on social media, that they have the knowledge and skills to kind of make their own decisions and understand their nutrition a little more.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, you said anyone who's saying never eat this or this food is bad is actually contributing to making people less knowledgeable about nutrition because it is so individual.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so difficult, isn't it, within the fitness world, especially with social media as well, because I guess I have to say I'm a little bit guilty of this when I'm trying to create little 10, 15, 20-second, 30-second videos where you're trying to give nuance in a topic. It's really, really difficult. And unfortunately, that's the way that everyone consumes content now and wants to get their information. They only want these snappy little podcast sound bites of, this is the way to do it. Go, that's you. Whereas as soon as you start adding any nuance there, people just switch off or swipe away, and it's really difficult. So yeah, it just if the person you're listening to isn't showing any nuance or saying it depends, then just run as fast as you can.
Yeah. I'm wondering, when you say stuff like that, do you guys get any hate? Like, do you, for other trainers, or, I think you mentioned on your podcast once, someone got really upset with you when you said that coffee enemas are not doing anything good for them. And then they were like, my coffee enemas are really important to me. What do you do when someone says, oh, but I love that, because for me, I think, if you love that, have at her. But I'm not going to tell you that there's any evidence behind it.
Yeah, that's the tricky balance, isn't it? Right? Like something like coffee enemas, I will draw a line at. I'm not going to provide any balance because like people have died doing them. Like these are incredibly dangerous, so no one should ever do them. Like that's kind of it. And I'm not happy to kind of say, oh, well, if you enjoy it and it feels good, then keep sticking coffee up your butt. Like it just, but then there are some things that maybe I wouldn't advertise or I wouldn't encourage people to do. Like I would never encourage someone to go do keto. Like I'm never going to say, oh, we should do intermittent fasting. Like it's not for me. And I think that there's a better way to do it. However, if someone comes to me and they've had great success and feel really good eating in that way, then who am I to judge? But yeah, I think that's just, it comes down to how knowledgeable are you around the topic and the research. Like I feel pretty confident in my ability to kind of whack back anything that I'm saying that gets criticized because I spend my time researching this shit and I really enjoy it. So yeah, like you're always going to get hate on social media as well, because I mean, you say that fruit's good and someone who does carnivore diet is going to tell you that you're killing people. Like it's just wild on social media. So you will never win. But as long as you kind of know the research and you're confident in it, you can't go too wrong.
Well, I think something that the evidence-based world can swing too far and focus on only the literature and ignore anyone's N equals 1. But people's stories are valid, right? And there are things we don't know yet. And we don't have research on every single facet of nutrition or fitness. And especially in the nutritional world, like nutrition research is very difficult to do because of the limitations around how we fuel our bodies and such. So I feel like what's important is just saying, okay, your experience is valid. We draw a line at coffee enemas and some other things. But maybe the message is, I'm okay. Thank you for your feedback. I'm not speaking to you. Like this isn't for you, and that's okay. And there's no way to speak to everyone in a way that makes everyone happy. And so you just have to say, okay, well, that wasn't for you and that's okay. Move along. I'll move along as well.
Perfect. So guys, just to finish up here, if you were to have someone that you really loved who was kind of like a friend of a friend and you met them at a party and they're like, oh, you're a trainer. I really got to get fit. I'm going to go get some fitness information. I'm going to go sign up for an Instagram account and get some fitness information. So what would you tell them about how to curate the fitness information that's coming at them? As if I'm understanding correctly, this is sort of your mission that you want to help people with this.
I would say look for have a few red flags you're looking for and have those be anyone giving you absolutes. So if someone says, always do this or never do that, those are some absolutes that probably aren't applicable to the whole population. Let that be a red flag for you. Let that be a red flag. Or if the methods sound extreme and unsustainable, let that be a red flag for you. And when you consume information, think, is this sustainable for me? Is this something I could continue to do? Or is this a short-term solution that's only going to turn into long-term problems? And I think those are kind of like some filters we can think through as we navigate this very convoluted world of over-information.
The only thing I would add to that as well is it's something me and Kate once again have spoken about a lot, is to make sure that your social media feed has a lot more body diversity on it. It's a topic I feel so passionate about. The amount of time people wonder why they're going down a really restrictive bodybuilding approach, but then you look at their social media feed and they're just following bodybuilders, and that's who they're getting all their information from. Fit and healthy bodies, once again, come in all sizes. And I think that our social media feeds should reflect that, because if we are looking at people in all different body types being healthy and active and eating well, and I think it completely changes your approach to exercise and nutrition, and it stops being so kind of body focused and weight centric, and that truly is a game changer.
That is great advice. I know people are going to want to hear more from both of you. Tell us where they can keep in touch with you and follow you and learn more.
So most of my content I create is on Instagram. I dabble a little bit in TikTok, but really don't like it. The handles are both exactly the same. So it's just my name, which probably easy to see in the show notes because it's a bit of a strange one, but it's Michael Ulloa PT. Or I should say as well, follow our podcast as well, which is called How to Fitness. And you can find that on pretty much every podcast platform too.
And you can find me on Instagram as well at KL Nutrition, or my website. There's a lot more information on nutrition, a lot of free resources there, katelymannutrition.com. And then, the podcast. We're currently putting out one every other Monday. So we have a really good lineup ahead.
Fantastic. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've enjoyed this conversation so much. I hope you enjoyed that. Honestly, dude, when I am scrolling my social media feed and I see the stuff that most wellness influencers are putting out there, I'm like, damn, I live in a sketchy part of town. So when I come across fellow fitness professionals that are putting out awesome content like Michael and Kate, it's like you're in a bad neighborhood and you see that block parent sign in someone's window. Does anybody remember that? Block parents? Is that still a thing? It's like certain houses would have a sign in their window that says block parent. And if you're a kid being bullied or whatever, you could run to that house. Does that even still exist? If you know the answer to that question, or if you have any comments about this episode, I would love to hear them. Seriously, this makes me so happy. So send me a DM on Instagram at UnaDuncan, and I'll see you next week. Hey dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at UnaDuncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.